I leaned back in my chair, my eyes scanning the room crowded with laughter, clinking glasses, and vibrant energy. But my thoughts were miles away, gnawed by one question: why did Nathan Wright, of all people, go after my wife? And worse, why did Laura choose him? What did he have that was worth breaking everything we had built together? Laura and I had mapped out a future once, a vision of quiet mornings and shared adventures after the kids moved out. The time was fast approaching when we'd have the house to ourselves, a chapter we were supposed to write together. But clearly, she had been working on an entirely different story. Not so long ago, I used to imagine what reconnecting with Laura might look like once the house emptied out. I hoped we'd rekindle something, rediscover the magic that had brought us together in the first place. But now, it hit me like a sledgehammer: maybe she had already made her choice, and I wasn't in her plans. That realization was a heavy blow. Whatever sadness had lingered was replaced with a deep, simmering anger. Around the table, the tension was palpable. Mike leaned in, his voice low. "You okay, David?" I didn't answer right away, my gaze locked on a booth across the room. 4 young women sat there, laughing and toasting each other. They looked carefree and vibrant, a sharp contrast to the mess my life had become. Why hadn't Nathan picked one of them? I stared, and then a laugh burst from my chest, startling everyone. It wasn't a soft laugh, it was loud and unfiltered, drawing curious glances from nearby tables. Tears welled up as I realized my life had irrevocably changed. Laura had left, and in doing so, had set me free. Any loyalty I had felt was gone. The table fell silent as I slipped off my wedding ring and placed it in front of Michelle, who stared at it like it was a live grenade. "If you see Laura," I said, voice sharp, "give her this. She can keep it." Standing up, I tossed a 20 onto the table. "That's for my drink. You all seemed fine with her affair, guess you can handle the rest." I strode out of the bar, ignoring their shouts. I didn't know exactly where I was going, but I knew one thing: nobody was going to stop me. My thoughts churned as I walked. Laura's selfishness had destroyed what we had, but now it was my turn to find some joy. When I arrived at the hotel, I asked the clerk for a room. "We only have the honeymoon suite left," she said, listing off its lavish features. "Perfect," I replied without hesitation. "And charge me for our old room too, she can stay there." Her eyebrows rose in surprise, but I wasn't done. "Oh, and if Laura asks where I am, tell her nothing. No key, no info." In the suite, I stood on the balcony, overlooking the sparkling city below. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of peace. After freshening up and donning the tuxedo I had brought for a night out with Laura, I headed back to the club. The line outside snaked down the block, but a discreet $100 bill to the doorman solved that problem. Inside, the table of young women near the dance floor caught my eye again. With a grin, I approached. "How come 4 beautiful women are here without company?" I asked smoothly. They laughed, and the tall brunette quipped, "We're here for our friend. Her boyfriend ditched her for someone else, so we're making sure she has fun tonight." I turned to the petite redhead, extending my hand. "Would you let me help?" She smiled, taking my hand. "I'm Emily," she said as I led her to the dance floor. And sure, why not? As we danced, I couldn't help but notice her warmth. "So, what kind of idiot would let someone like you go?" I asked. Emily laughed, rolling her eyes. "He's just a jerk." "Enough about him, what's your story?" I hesitated but then told her the truth. "My wife left me. I think you already saw her with Nathan Wright earlier." Emily's brows rose. "Wow, that was your wife. Guess we're both coming off betrayals tonight." For the rest of the evening, we danced and talked. When the music slowed, I found myself relaxing for the first time in months. At her table, Emily's friends teased her but eventually scooted over to make room for me. I ordered champagne, promising a toast to second chances. One of the women, Hannah, smirked. "So, do you two have some sort of arrangement?" "Not even close," I said firmly. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. Dancing with Emily, laughing with her friends, it reminded me there was a world outside the pain Laura had caused. I wasn't entirely sure where this road would take me, but I was finally ready to take the first step. Right then, our waitress came by, and I asked if everyone at the table liked champagne. They all nodded eagerly, so I ordered 2 bottles of their best. Cheers erupted, and the mood lightened immediately. I introduced myself, and they did the same: Hannah, Sarah, and Olivia, all nursing students with Emily. When the champagne arrived and glasses were poured, Sarah, the brunette, leaned in and asked bluntly, "So, what are you going to do about your wife?" I exhaled heavily. "As far as I'm concerned," she ended at the moment she walked out that door. "Do you have kids?" one of them asked. I nodded. "Yeah, a son and a daughter, 16 and 14. They're independent now, so I'll sort things out soon enough." Emily hooked her arm through mine and smiled. "Forget about all that. Tonight, you're with us." We clinked glasses, laughed, and lost ourselves in the lively buzz of the club. We danced, joked, and shared stories. The other girls floated between dancing with strangers and chatting at the table, but Emily stayed with me, keeping her arm linked with mine. Her warmth was magnetic, a welcome distraction from the pain still gnawing at me. Suddenly, Olivia's expression darkened, and she stormed away. We turned to see what had sparked her anger and spotted Michelle, standing by the entrance. Michelle had clearly come to talk to me, but before she could get close, Olivia intercepted her near my old table. From across the room, we couldn't hear the exchange, but Olivia's finger jabbed at Michelle's chest as she spoke, her face furious. Michelle, teary-eyed, retreated back to her seat. When Olivia returned, still fuming, Hannah and Sarah gave her enthusiastic high fives. With a triumphant grin, she sipped her champagne and declared, "None of those traitors are coming near us tonight." I glanced back at my old group as they hurriedly packed up to leave. Michelle and Lisa looked shaken, but none of them glanced my way. "Olivia, what happened?" I asked, amused but curious. She shrugged. "That woman had the nerve to try and talk to you, so I made it clear how I feel about people who side with cheaters." I chuckled. "Well, I'd say you made your point. Guess they wanted me to forgive Laura so they wouldn't feel so guilty for covering for her." I raised my glass. "To you, Olivia. For that, I think you've earned a kiss." Before I could follow through, Emily playfully grabbed my face and kissed me first. The table erupted in cheers, and Emily gave me a teasing smile. "Get a room already?" Sarah joked. I grinned. "Actually, I've got a suite at a nearby hotel. And judging by the champagne, none of you should be driving. Want to keep the party going?" The girls cheered as we paid the bill and left the club. Emily leaned on my arm as we walked, with the others laughing and leaning on each other. At the hotel reception, I ordered 4 more bottles of champagne to be delivered to the suite. When I mentioned it was a honeymoon suite, the girls burst into laughter. On the elevator ride up, they started humming the wedding march, making Emily blush and cling to me tighter. When we reached the suite, the girls dared me to carry Emily over the threshold. She looked at me with sparkling eyes and whispered, "Only if you want to." Grinning, I scooped her up and stepped inside, her laughter and embrace making the moment unexpectedly joyful. The others hooped and laughed, their teasing pausing only when Olivia discovered the jacuzzi on the balcony. "Jacuzzi time," she shouted, shedding layers down to her bra and underwear. Within seconds, the others followed her lead, racing to the hot tub. Emily and I shared a laugh as she held my hand, leading me toward the balcony. A knock at the door signaled the champagne's arrival. I brought it out, distributing glasses as the girls splashed around. "Aren't you overdressed?" Hannah teased. I laughed it off and stayed by Emily's side as the girls encouraged her to join them. But Emily simply smiled and pulled me back into the room, where we danced slowly in the dim light of the suite. The next morning, I woke up with Emily curled against me, the other girls sprawled out across the massive king-sized bed. They must have joined us later in the night. As Emily stirred, she gave me a soft smile. "Did you enjoy yourself, David?" "More than I have in a long time," I admitted. "Any regrets?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "None at all," I said firmly. Her smile widened, and she took my hand, pulling me toward the shower. What followed was a moment of unbridled passion, something so different from the life I'd left behind with Laura that it felt almost surreal. Later, as I drove Emily home, she rested her head against my shoulder, thoughtful. "David," she began softly, "I know what Laura did was terrible. But if you think there's still a chance to fix things with her, you should take it. If not, I'd like to see you again." I squeezed her hand, offering her a reassuring smile. "I don't see fixing things as an option anymore, Emily. I had a great time with you, more than I've had in years. I'd love to see you again." At her door, she kissed me goodbye, a hopeful look in her eyes. Driving away, though, the weight of my marriage and its inevitable end settled back over me. Emily had been a much-needed escape, but it was clear that the battle with Laura was far from over. As I parked in front of my house, the decisions I needed to make loomed larger than ever. When Laura arrived home later, she greeted me as though nothing had happened. Her voice was bright, her posture casual, as if last night hadn't shattered everything. But as she spoke, her words rang hollow. She had made her choice, and now, it was my turn to make mine. I started with a new back door on the left side, envisioning a compact kitchen that mirrored the original layout. The office became an extra bedroom on my side, while the dining room was converted into a third bedroom for Laura's half. By the time I was done, the house was nearly identical on both sides, except for the detached garage, which I ensured was accessible only to me by changing the lock and keypad. To complete the transformation, I put up a tall fence dividing the backyard neatly in two. Every day, I kept the kids in the loop, telling them about the house renovations, without revealing the full extent of what was happening. Laura tried to talk to me several times, but I stonewalled her with, "I'm not ready to listen." Halfway through the project, I picked up the phone and called Emily. The sound of her voice immediately lifted my mood. "Thought I'd scared you off," she teased. "Not a chance," I said, grinning. "In fact, I can't stop thinking about you. How about a weekend trip, just the two of us?" "Are you serious?" she asked, her voice lighting up. "Completely," I replied. "How does the Bahamas sound?" "Fly out Thursday, come back Tuesday." There was a moment of silence, and then she laughed. "David, that sounds incredible." "Perfect. Pack light," I said. After finalizing the travel arrangements, I transferred the joint savings into an account in my name, redirecting my salary just in case Laura tried anything drastic. The cost of the trip didn't faze me. If she wanted a divorce, she'd end up with half anyway, and the thought of spending that money on Emily instead was a satisfying twist. For 16 hours a day, I poured myself into the renovations, dividing every space possible. By Wednesday, I'd painted and trimmed the dividing wall on Laura's side and left her a note, "Bring the kids home tomorrow." On Thursday morning, I waited outside, watching as Laura pulled into the driveway with Jacob and Emma in tow. The confusion on their faces was evident as they stepped out of the car. "Dad," Jacob asked, "what happened to the house?" I grinned. "Welcome to our new duplex. What do you think?" They stood frozen, wide-eyed, as I walked them through the changes. "Don't worry," I reassured them. "Your rooms are already set up on your side." I led them through the updated layout, pointing out their bedrooms and the new spaces. Laura quietly carried their bags, her eyes darting between me and the kids, as though searching for an opening to speak. This living room feels smaller, Emma noted, inspecting the space. Maybe, I said, but there's a pool and jacuzzi in the works. Besides, smaller spaces are cozier, right? My joking tone finally brought some smiles to their faces. After helping them settle in, I grabbed sandwiches from a local deli and called everyone to the kitchen table for lunch. Emma's curiosity finally broke through. "Dad, why did you do all this without asking us first?" I took a slow sip of my drink before replying, "It was your mom's idea." Emma's head snapped toward Laura, eyes narrowing. "Mom? You thought this was a good idea?" Laura fumbled for words, clearly caught off guard. "It was a misunderstanding. Your dad took things too literally." "I don't know," I countered, smirking. "You seemed pretty clear at the time." Jacob looked at her, his voice cautious. "Mom, what's going on? You've been upset for days." I shrugged, deflecting. "You'll have to ask her. I've got things to handle." Before either of them could ask more questions, I announced I'd be out of town for a few days but would call every evening. As I kissed the kids goodbye, I didn't bother saying anything to Laura. The weekend with Emily was everything I needed. We flew first class to the Bahamas, staying in a luxurious resort that seemed plucked straight from a postcard. The days were filled with white sand beaches, turquoise water, and a kind of laughter I hadn't experienced in years. Emily was radiant, her enthusiasm infectious. By the second night, as we sipped drinks by the water, she looked at me and said, "I think I'm falling for you." I smiled, reaching for her hand. The feeling's mutual. Back home, we unpacked the week together, savoring every stolen moment. Emily was exactly what I needed, someone who made me feel wanted and valued. On Tuesday, I dropped Emily off at her place. As we lingered on her doorstep, she asked, "Stay one more night?" "I'd love to," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "But you've got classes tomorrow." She laughed softly, kissing me one last time before heading inside. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in months, though I knew the real battle awaited me back at the house. When I got home, the house was silent. Laura was in the kitchen, her back to me as she prepared something. Without turning around, she said, "David, can we talk?" I leaned against the doorway, folding my arms. "About what?" She turned, her expression tired and uncertain. "About us. About what happens now." I studied her for a moment, weighing my words. "What happens now is simple, Laura. You live your life, and I live mine." Her face fell. "You can't mean that." "I still love you, David." "Funny," I said coldly, because I thought love meant loyalty. Or at the very least, honesty. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't waver. "This isn't just about what you did, Laura. It's about who you are. And I can't live with that." As I walked out of the room, her soft sobs followed me. I didn't stop. This was my house now, my life. And I wasn't looking back. Pulling up to the house, I noticed Laura's car in her driveway. I parked on the street, not wanting to deal with her immediately. As I unpacked, a knock came at my door. She stood there, her expression unreadable. "You're back," she said flatly. "Yes, I am," I replied. "Can we talk?" she asked hesitantly. "Sure. What's on your mind?" I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Can I come in?" "No," I said firmly. "This is my space, and you're not welcome here. Ever." Her face fell, and she retreated, stunned, back to her side of the house. In that moment, it became painfully clear, this duplex arrangement wasn't going to work. Later, as we sat at her kitchen table, she tried again. "David, I love you," she said, her voice trembling. "I want things to go back to the way they were." "That's not going to happen," I replied bluntly. "Why not?" she asked, desperation creeping into her tone. Because, Laura, you did something that changed how I feel about you. That doesn't just go away, I explained. That shouldn't define us, she argued, her eyes pleading. Actually, it does, I said, my voice steady. Nothing can erase what happened or how it's made me feel. Yes, I still love you, but imagine this, if we'd been on a first date and you left me to spend the night with someone else, do you think there would have been a second date? But it was Nathan, she protested, as if his name alone justified everything. I don't care who it was, I shot back. You chose him. You snuck out of the club to spend the night with him. It was just one night, she said, exasperated. One man shows interest, and suddenly I mean nothing to you. Should I start keeping you away from anyone who might flirt with you? A marathon's this weekend, should I worry about the winner? I asked sarcastically. That's not fair, she snapped. Now you care about fairness? I said calmly, leaning back in my chair. Fairness, in a relationship where only I'm expected to be fair. You want to justify what you did, to talk me out of my anger, to convince me it's my fault for feeling betrayed? I reached for her hand, and reluctantly, she took it. We locked eyes, and I knew it was time to lay it all out. It's too late, Laura, I said softly. Her voice wavered. It's too late. Yes, Laura, I said. It's too late. She hesitated, then her expression hardened. I found someone else, she said defiantly, testing me. No, I said evenly, surprising her. Her confidence faltered. Do you know who it is? She asked, a challenge in her tone. Oh, I'm sure Tina filled you in about the redhead I danced with, I replied. The one who took your place on the anniversary you decided wasn't worth celebrating. Sadness flickered across her face as she processed my words. She clearly recognized Emily's name from photos Tina must have shared. Are you doing this to get back at me? She asked, her voice trembling with anger. Parading some 24-year-old just to hurt me? Actually, she's 21, I said, unable to resist. And we spent 4 days in the Bahamas. Remember that dream vacation we always talked about? It was amazing. Her face twisted with fury, but as I recounted the trip, I forced myself to steady my expression, thinking of the kids. Her anger simmered, but she didn't lash out. Instead, she sighed and rested her hands on the table. She stared at me, her voice soft but resolute. It doesn't matter. I love you. I sighed, frustration creeping into my voice. You keep saying that. But why should your love matter when my love clearly didn't mean enough to you? Why should I care about your love? Tears welled in her eyes. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Well, you should have thought about that before, I said sharply. You took me for granted, Laura. And now, you don't deserve me. I left her in tears and returned to my side of the house. Later, I took the kids on a tour of the renovations. I showed them the kitchen and described my plans for a glass wall overlooking the pool. They noticed the backyard fence, dividing the property, and seemed uneasy. Dad, why do I need 2 rooms here? Jacob asked, puzzled. Because this side is going to be my home, I explained. The other side will be your mom's. Emma looked at me, her voice quiet. Are you and Mom getting divorced? Mom won't tell us anything, Jacob added, frustration clear in his tone. No, I said, trying to reassure them. We're just separated. I don't want to be a weekend dad, so I split the house. You can choose which side you want to live on. Before we could continue, Laura appeared at the door, announcing dinner was ready. The meal was tense. The kids picked at their food, their unease palpable. Finally, Jacob broke the silence. I'll move in with Dad once my room's ready. Laura's eyes widened. Jacob, don't say that. Your father and I are just working through things. Emma looked at her, frowning. Mom, why won't you tell us what's going on? Laura's voice broke. Because I don't know what to say. The kids exchanged uneasy glances, and I could feel their frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The weight of Laura's choices hung heavy over the table, a silence that no words could fix. For now, we were simply living with the consequences of her decisions. Sarah slapped her hand down on the table, her voice cutting through the silence. Who's actually changing, though? I want to know. Her fiery gaze darted between Laura and me, searching for answers. Ethan looked equally bewildered, glancing between us for some clarity. Laura avoided my eyes, staring at her plate. But when her eyes welled with tears, the kids seemed to understand without needing words. Gently, I told them that their mom was just tired and needed some rest. I helped Laura to the bedroom, undressed her, and tucked her into bed. As I kissed her forehead, more out of pity than affection, I felt an ache for what we'd lost. Turning off the light, I closed the door, leaving her alone. In my mind, Laura had become like a grown child who'd made a catastrophic mistake and now had to live with the lifelong consequences. While I knew I'd always care for her on some level, she no longer occupied the central place in my life or my heart. That space was gone. Checking on Ethan, I found him lying on his bed, scrolling through his phone. Want to talk? I asked. He shook his head without looking up. I'm good. In Sarah's room, it was a different story. She sat on the bed, tearful and fuming. Why did she do this, Dad? She asked, her voice trembling. You'll have to ask her, sweetheart, I said, my heart breaking. But forgiveness doesn't come easily. I don't think I can forgive her, she said quietly, anger giving way to sadness. I understand, I replied. But no matter what happens, I want us to stay a family. We are a family, she insisted. But I'm not sharing a room with Mom anymore. We hugged, exchanged I love yous, and I left, heading back to my side of the house. This was our new normal. Mornings didn't change much, since I usually left for work before the kids woke up. Laura and I divided responsibilities for their activities, and we still managed occasional family dinners in her half of the house. Laura kept asking for weekly talks to work on us, but I had no interest in rehashing things. At school events, I went out of my way to avoid her. If she tried to sit near me, I'd excuse myself to the restroom and find another seat when I returned. Other single parents and divorced acquaintances gravitated toward me, curious about our status. My answer was always the same, we're separated. Meanwhile, I invested in my side of the house, upgrading the kitchen, buying a big TV and sleek furniture, and transforming it into a modern bachelor's retreat. I even treated myself to a high-end convertible, something I'd wanted for years. One day, Laura finally confronted me. David, can we afford all this? That car must have cost a fortune. My old car was 8 years older than yours, I said flatly. I needed an upgrade. You've replaced your car twice as often as I have. It was my turn. Her eyes narrowed. What about the furniture? I'd be willing to share it with you. It's fine, I replied, brushing her off. Your style never appealed to me anyway. She looked hurt. Why didn't you tell me that before? Because I wanted you to be happy, I said simply. Well, I like your new car, she said, trying to soften the mood. You look great in your new clothes, too. Thanks, I replied. Though Chloe helped me pick them out, along with the furniture. Turns out we have similar tastes. At Chloe's name, Laura's smile faltered, and her hand dropped from my shoulder. Oh. I was just curious, she said coolly, before turning to leave. Chloe became a constant presence in my life, spending weekends and many weeknights at my place. Ethan moved into one of the extra rooms on my side, while Sarah, who mainly stayed with Laura, grew close to Chloe, treating her like an older sister. Chloe's friends, Hannah, Sarah, and Olivia, often joined us, their playful energy filling the house. Ethan loved the attention, especially when they flirted with him by the pool, each vying to make him blush. Eventually, Brooke kissed him, boosting his confidence enough to start dating someone from school. Laura wasn't thrilled when I invited Chloe to family dinners. After her second visit, Laura pulled me aside. "David, can you not bring your girlfriend to these dinners? It's supposed to be time for us as a family." "Fine," I replied calmly. "But if Chloe isn't welcome, then neither am I. The kids are always welcome to join us on my side." "That's not fair, David," she protested. "Fair?" I said, raising an eyebrow. "Fairness left the equation when you walked out of that club with Nathan Wright." Laura looked away, tears brimming in her eyes. "Chloe is welcome anytime," she murmured. After the pool and hot tub were installed, my side of the house became the go-to spot. Ethan spent hours outside, and even Sarah began gravitating more toward my side. Chloe's friends blended seamlessly into the mix, their light-hearted presence creating an atmosphere of fun and family that had been missing for years. But eventually, Chloe's path diverged from mine. At Olivia's wedding, I noticed the tension in her eyes. She was starting to see me more as a provider than a partner, and I sensed the age gap bothering her in ways it hadn't before. When she mentioned relocating, I asked if she'd consider marriage. Her hesitation spoke volumes. While she cared for me, she wanted to follow her own path, one that didn't include me. I understood, though it hurt deeply. We parted on good terms, cherishing the time we'd shared. Chloe's honesty and warmth had been a healing contrast to the betrayal I'd endured. Unlike Laura, she never lied or manipulated me, and for that, I was grateful. Years later, as Sarah left for college, Laura and I had our final conversation about us. Standing in the driveway, she asked quietly, "Do you think we'll ever find our way back to each other?" I shook my head. "Some things can't be undone, Laura. You made your choice. I've made mine." Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. "I'm sorry for everything," she said softly. "I know," I replied. "But sorry doesn't change the past." As Sarah's car disappeared down the street, I turned and walked away, closing the door on the life we once had. "David, I still love you," Laura said, her voice heavy with regret. "I made a terrible mistake, and I've regretted it every day since. I haven't dated or even looked at another man. I know you haven't had anything serious since Emily, and I was hoping you might move back in with me, just to see how things go." She reached for a necklace around her neck and pulled it off. Dangling from the chain was my wedding ring, the same one I'd handed to Michelle on the night Laura had walked away. Laura's eyes were full of hope as she extended it toward me. "You still don't understand, do you, Laura?" I said quietly. "That night wasn't a test of my love for you. It was a test of your love for me." "But I do love you," she insisted, her voice trembling. "No," I replied firmly. "You loved the life we built, the comfort of a stable marriage. You loved having a husband who trusted you, who made you feel valued and cared for. You loved the partnership we had, making decisions together, raising our kids, and sharing intimacy, even when it wasn't as often as before. You loved having someone who supported your ambitions without question. And now, you realize you won't find anyone who can love you the way I did. But no one will ever love you as much as I did, Laura." Her hands tightened around the necklace until her knuckles turned white. She looked shattered, holding on to a symbol of something that no longer existed. "You never truly appreciated what we had," I continued. "And now it's gone. I can't be near you again. I'll never give you another chance to hurt me like that. I thought it was us against the world, but you destroyed that when you chose Nathan Wright." Tears streamed down her face, and desperation crept into her voice. "How many times do I have to tell you I regret it?" "This was never about Nathan," I said, shaking my head. "You thought you'd won some prize when he chose you that night. But you know who was really lucky? Me. Because when I was at my lowest, your betrayal showed me the truth. that the love we had wasn't as special as I thought. It wasn't built to last. But I was still capable of giving that love to someone who deserved it. I paused, my mind flashing back to that night. When I was sitting at that table, betrayed and furious, I looked across the room and saw Emily. She caught my eye, and when she smiled, it was like she was reminding me that I could still have happiness. That I could still love. "You didn't just hurt me, Laura. You set me free." Laura clutched the ring tightly, her face crumpling under the weight of my words. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but no words came. I turned away and walked to my car, the sleek convertible that had become a symbol of my new beginning. As I slid into the driver's seat, a grin spread across my face. I couldn't wait to get home. Emily had just moved back in with me last week after leaving her old job to start fresh. In the short time since, she'd shown me what it truly meant to be needed, trusted, and valued again. It was a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been missing for years. Trust really is a beautiful thing. As the engine roared to life, I drove off without looking back. My past with Laura was just that, a chapter closed for good. The road ahead was wide open, and for the first time in years, I felt truly alive.